I am Alexander Wilson, 32 years old, and I have built a good life as a software engineer in Seattle. But growing up, my existence was a daily nightmare because of my brother Jason. For years, my parents ignored his toxic bullying, always making excuses for him. When he finally got arrested last year, they called begging for my help. I refused. If you are watching this, let me know where you are viewing from in the comments, and hit that like and subscribe button to support stories about setting boundaries with toxic family members. Growing up in Portland, Oregon, our family looked perfect from the outside. My father, Robert, worked as an accountant, while my mother, Linda, taught third grade at the local elementary school. We lived in a comfortable 4-bedroom house in a nice suburban neighborhood with tree-lined streets and weekend barbecues. To neighbors and extended family, we were the picture-perfect American family. Jason was 4 years older than me, and our early relationship was normal for brothers. I have faint memories of building blanket forts together when I was around 3, and he was 7. He would sometimes let me tag along when he rode bikes with the neighborhood kids, and he even taught me how to tie my shoes. Those brief glimpses of normal brotherhood make what came later even more painful to remember. The shift began gradually around the time Jason turned 12. I was 8, still looking up to my big brother, still believing he was the coolest person I knew. The first incidents seemed like typical sibling stuff. He stopped wanting me around his friends. He would get irritated if I entered his room. He started calling me names like dork and loser instead of Alex. My parents noticed these changes, but dismissed them entirely. Boys will be boys, my dad would say with a chuckle. Brothers fight sometimes. It builds character. My mother would just sigh and say, Jason is at that age. He will grow out of it. But he never did. Instead, the behavior escalated year by year. Our family dynamics were deeply rooted in traditional values that unwittingly enabled Jason. As the firstborn son, Jason received special treatment from the beginning. My father had played football in high school and saw Jason as carrying on that legacy. When Jason made the junior football team, Dad installed a practice area in our backyard and spent hours training with him. I showed no interest or talent for sports. Instead, I gravitated toward books, science, and computers. While Dad occasionally acknowledged my academic achievements with a pat on the back, it never compared to the celebration when Jason won a game. That is my boy, Dad would shout, beaming with pride, while Mom took countless photos of Jason in his uniform. The contrasting treatment became more pronounced as we grew older. Jason got a new bike for making the team. I got books for straight A's. Jason had a later curfew because he is older, even when I reached the same age he had been. The rules were always different, always favoring him. My mother, though loving in her way, was conflict avoidant to an extreme. Whenever Jason and I fought, her strategy was to separate us without addressing the underlying issues. Just stay away from your brother, if he is bothering you, she would advise, as if that were possible in our shared home. When I tried to tell her about specific incidents, she would cut me off with, I do not want to hear who did what. Just stop fighting. Extended family occasionally noticed the problematic dynamics. During one Thanksgiving dinner when I was 10, my Aunt Rebecca pulled my mother aside after Jason had spent the entire meal flicking food at me when adults were not looking. I could hear their conversation from around the corner. Linda, do you see how Jason treats Alex? Aunt Rebecca asked. They are just being brothers, Mom replied dismissively. No, Linda, that is not normal sibling behavior. Jason seems to genuinely enjoy hurting Alex. You do not understand, because you only have girls, my mother retorted, effectively ending the conversation. As Jason's treatment worsened, I developed coping mechanisms to survive. Our house had a small attic space that I converted into a secret reading nook. I would hide there for hours, escaping into fantasy worlds where good triumphed over evil. I joined the science club at school, spending extra hours in the lab where Jason would never voluntarily set foot. I taught myself basic programming on the family computer during late nights, when everyone else was asleep. These interests became my sanctuary, but they also gave Jason more ammunition. Look at the nerd hiding in his books again, he would mock. No wonder you do not have any friends. The cruel irony was that his behavior was precisely why I struggled to make friends. Who would want to come to a house where my brother might humiliate them? Who would risk befriending the kid whose brother was one of the popular athletes. By the time I was 12, the contrast between our public and private lives was stark. At school events, we looked like a normal, supportive family. Dad would have his arm around Mom Jason, would be in his Letterman jacket, and I would stand awkwardly in my too large khakis. People would comment, "What a wonderful family you have." I would smile weakly, while feeling like an imposter, knowing what awaited me at home. The worst part was not Jason's behavior, but my parents' willful blindness to it. During parent-teacher conferences, my mother would beam as teachers praised my academic performance. My father would nod approvingly at my science fair trophies. Yet at home, neither of them acknowledged the daily torment I endured. It was as if they had created a fictional version of our family in their minds, and no reality could penetrate that illusion. As I entered adolescence, I realized that my escape would have to come through my own efforts. No rescue was coming. No parental intervention would save me. If I wanted a different life, I would need to create it myself. This realization was both terrifying and liberating. It meant I was alone, but it also meant I had the power to change my future. By the time I turned 12, Jason's behavior had evolved from typical sibling rivalry into systematic bullying. The physical intimidation became a daily occurrence. He developed a habit of shoving me against walls when passing in the hallway, always careful to do it when our parents were not around. "Oops, did not see you there, shrimp," he would say with a smirk. That made it clear it was completely intentional. His pranks crossed the line into cruelty. He put laxatives in my soda before a school presentation. He replaced my shampoo with hair removal cream, causing embarrassing bald patches that took months to grow back. When I got my first computer by saving up allowance money for 2 years, Jason accidentally spilled an entire cup of water on the keyboard just weeks after I bought it. The emotional abuse was relentless. Nothing I did was ever good enough, cool enough, or worthy of respect in his eyes. "Nice shirt did Mom dress you today," he would say when I wore something new. "That science award is just for kids too stupid to do real sports," he announced at dinner after I won the regional science competition. The constant belittling wore down my self-esteem day by day. But the social sabotage hurt the most. When Michael, a new kid at school, seemed interested in becoming friends, Jason cornered him in the hallway. "You do not want to hang out with my brother. He wets the bed and cries about it," he told Michael, who started avoiding me after that. When Lisa partnered with me for a science project and seemed to enjoy working together, Jason spread rumors that I had a creepy shrine to her in my room. She requested a new partner the next day. Certain incidents stand out as particularly traumatic turning points. When I was 13, I saved up to buy a special astronomy book I had wanted for months. 3 days after bringing it home, I found it in the backyard, pages ripped out and the cover smeared with mud. When I confronted Jason, he laughed. "Prove it was me," he taunted. When I showed the destroyed book to my parents, my father sighed. "Books can be replaced, Alex. It is not the end of the world." During freshman year of high school, I gathered the courage to try out for the chess team. To my surprise, I made it. On the day of our first tournament, I came downstairs to find my chess set pieces glued permanently to the board. Jason watched from the kitchen table, eating cereal and smirking as I tried desperately to separate the pieces. "Guess you should have kept your stuff in your room," he said. I missed the tournament and quit the team out of embarrassment. The worst incident happened when I was 15. After months of working up courage, I asked Ellie Matthews to the spring dance. To my shock and delight, she said yes. The night of the dance, as I waited downstairs in my rented suit, Jason told me he needed to show me something urgent in the garage. When I followed him, he shoved me into a stack of paint cans. My suit was ruined with blue and white paint. "Oops," Jason said, not even trying to hide his satisfaction. "Guess you will miss your date." I had to call Ellie and cancel, humiliated and devastated. Each time these things happened, I tried telling my parents. Their responses fell into predictable patterns. My father would dismiss my concerns entirely. "This is how brothers are, Alex. Jason is teaching you to be tough. You will thank him someday." When I showed him bruises from being shoved into furniture, he said, "Maybe you should learn to defend yourself better." My mother was no better, though her dismissal came wrapped in fake sympathy. "Oh honey, Jason does not mean it," she would say. "He is just jealous of how smart you are. Try to understand that it is hard for him to have a little brother who gets better grades." She treated his abuse as a compliment to me, as if I should feel flattered that my achievements made him insecure enough to torment me. Teachers occasionally noticed what was happening. In 10th grade, my English teacher, Mr. Sanderson, saw Jason trip me in the hallway between classes, sending my books and papers flying across the floor while other students laughed. Mr. Sanderson helped me gather my things and later called my parents to discuss the incident. That evening I overheard my father on the phone. "With all due respect, Mr. Sanderson, I think you are overreacting. Brother's roughhouse. It builds character. We would appreciate it if you would focus on teaching English and leave the parenting to us." After that call, Mr. Sanderson still gave me concerned looks in the hallway, but never intervened again. The constant stress took a toll on my mental health. I developed anxiety that manifested as stomach problems. I had trouble sleeping, lying awake, listening for Jason's footsteps in the hall, wondering what new torment awaited me the next day. I became withdrawn at school, afraid to draw attention to myself. I started having panic attacks before family gatherings, knowing Jason would find ways to humiliate me in front of relatives. Despite everything I found inner resources I never knew I had, I discovered that academic achievement could be my ticket out. While Jason coasted through school on his athletic reputation, I poured myself into studies. I realized that college scholarships could be my escape route, my one chance at a life away from Jason and my enabling parents. I joined every academic club that would have me. I studied late into the night. I volunteered for community service projects that would look good on college applications. Every A, every award, every teacher's recommendation letter became a building block in the bridge that would carry me away from my toxic home. There was a strange power in this realization. While Jason could make my daily life miserable, he could not stop me from planning my future. He could break my possessions, but he could not break my determination. This growing inner strength infuriated him, as he sensed that his power over me had limits. The more focused I became on escape, the more desperate his attacks grew. By 16, I had developed what my future therapist would later call protective detachment. I learned to emotionally distance myself from Jason's abuse and my parents' betrayal. I stopped expecting them to protect me. I stopped hoping they would change. Instead, I poured that energy into my escape plan. Every day was one day closer to freedom. Every semester completed was a step toward a new life. I just had to survive long enough to get there. As I entered junior year of high school, the contrast between Jason and me grew even starker. While I was taking advanced placement classes and prepping for SATs, Jason was struggling academically in his freshman year at the local community college. His football scholarship to a Division II school had fallen through due to his poor grades, something my parents never mentioned, but which clearly wounded my father's pride. My strategy of retreating into academics proved effective as both protection and preparation. I joined the robotics team and discovered I had a talent for programming. My computer science teacher, Mr. Reeves, became a mentor, staying after school to teach me coding languages not covered in our curriculum. For the first time, I excelled at something that earned genuine respect from peers. The robotics lab became my sanctuary, a place Jason would never enter. Meanwhile, Jason's frustration at his own failures intensified his targeting of me. When he came home from college on weekends, he seemed determined to tear down any confidence I had built. "Playing with your nerd toys again," he would mock when he saw me working on robotics projects. "That will really impress the 0 girls who talk to you." The breaking point came during my junior year. I had spent 6 months developing a machine learning algorithm for my science fair project. It was sophisticated enough that Mr. Reeves believed it could win not just the regional competition, but possibly the state level, which came with a substantial scholarship prize. The night before the fair, I ran final tests and left everything set up in the garage, where Dad had reluctantly allowed me to work. The next morning I came down to find my project in ruins. The circuit board was cracked, wires had been cut, and water had been poured over the entire setup. Hours of work and months of research were destroyed. I knew immediately who was responsible. Jason had come home unexpectedly the night before, supposedly to do laundry. When I confronted my parents with the evidence, their response broke something in me permanently. My mother suggested that maybe it was an accident, despite the obviously deliberate damage. My father actually had the audacity to say, "Well, You should have put it somewhere safer, knowing how clumsy people can be in the garage. For the first time in my life, I lost my carefully maintained composure. Clumsy. You think this was an accident? I shouted, holding up the circuit board with clean cuts through essential wires. Jason did this deliberately. He has been tormenting me for years, and you have never once protected me. Not once. My father's face reddened. Do not talk to us that way. Your brother would never deliberately hurt your project. You are overreacting. Overreacting? I was shaking with rage and hurt. He has been physically and emotionally abusing me for years, while you both pretended not to see it. What kind of parents are you? My mother started crying, her go-to response whenever confronted with uncomfortable truths. How can you say such terrible things? We have given you everything. We love both our boys equally. No, you do not, I said, suddenly calm, as the realization crystallized. You have never loved us equally, and you have never protected me, not once in 16 years. I walked out of the house that day and went straight to Mr. Reeves. I told him everything, the whole ugly truth about my family. He listened without interruption, and when I finished, he said something that changed my life. Alex, what they are allowing is not normal. It is not okay. And none of it is your fault. It was the first time any adult had validated what I had been experiencing. The relief was overwhelming. Mr. Reeves helped me salvage what I could of my project and put together a presentation explaining the original design. Though I did not win the scholarship, his support meant more than any prize. That spring, I learned that Jason's issues extended beyond our home. He had been caught cheating on exams at college and was on academic probation. A month later, he was cited for vandalism after a party got out of hand. In both cases, my parents rushed to his defense, paying for lawyers and making excuses. Boys will make mistakes, my father said at dinner, after writing a check for Jason's legal fees. The important thing is that we support him through this rough patch. I looked at him incredulously. What about my rough patch? What about when Jason destroyed my science project, or ruined my suit before the dance, or gave me a black eye last summer? Who supported me? That is different, my father dismissed. Those were just family matters. Those words cemented my determination to escape. I realized that in my parents' eyes, Jason would always be the priority, his needs always more important than mine, his transgressions always forgivable, while my pain was always dismissible. I began working part-time at a local computer repair shop, saving every penny in an account my parents knew nothing about. I researched scholarships, obsessively applying for dozens that might offer a way out. I studied for the SATs, as if my life depended on it, because in many ways it did. Without telling my parents, I applied to colleges on the opposite coast. My guidance counselor, Mrs. Winters, became another ally, helping me navigate financial aid forms and fee waivers. She seemed to understand my unstated need to get as far away as possible. You know, Alex, she said, during one of our meetings, family is supposed to be a support system, not something you need to be rescued from. What you are experiencing at home is not your fault, and wanting to leave does not make you a bad son. Her words gave me permission to plan my escape without guilt. By the time senior year arrived, I had a clear strategy: earn a scholarship substantial enough to cover what financial aid would not, graduate with honors, and move across the country, where Jason and my parents could not easily reach me. The day my acceptance letter from MIT arrived with a substantial merit scholarship was the day I knew I would be free. I had been accepted to several other schools, but MIT offered the best financial package and the greatest distance from Portland. I hid the letter and told my parents I was still waiting to hear back from colleges. At my high school graduation, as I gave the valedictorian speech, I looked out at the audience. My mother was wiping tears, seemingly proud, while my father nodded with approval. Jason was not there, having claimed a schedule conflict. Looking at my parents, I felt a complex mix of emotions: residual love, profound disappointment, simmering anger, and most of all, resolution. This chapter of my life was ending. I would never again be the powerless kid brother subject to Jason's cruelty and my parents' willful blindness. That summer, I finally told them about MIT and the scholarship. Their reaction was telling. Instead of pride, their first response was concern about the distance. But that is so far away, my mother protested. Why not Oregon State or Portland University? You could live at home and save money. I need to do this, I said firmly. MIT is one of the best engineering schools in the country. This is my future. My father frowned. It seems like you are running away from your family. I met his gaze steadily. I am running toward my future. There is a difference. Neither of them mentioned what we all knew, that home had never been a safe place for me. That staying would mean 4 more years of Jason's abuse, whenever he was around, that they had never once prioritized my well-being over his. Comfort. As I packed for college that August, I made a private promise to myself I would never again allow anyone to treat me the way my family had. Landing at Boston Logan International Airport that fall felt like stepping onto another planet. 2,500 miles now separated me from Portland, from Jason, from my parents' enabling behavior. The Massachusetts air seemed cleaner somehow, unburdened by years of accumulated resentment and fear. MIT was everything I had hoped for, and more. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who valued intelligence and creativity, who saw my coding skills as impressive rather than worthy of ridicule. My roommate Raj was a computer science major from Chicago who stayed up late working on projects just like I did. We bonded immediately over programming languages and science fiction. The early days were not without challenges. Despite my scholarship and financial aid money was tight, I took a job at the campus IT help desk working 20 hours a week while maintaining a full course load. The schedule was grueling, but each paycheck represented another brick in the wall of independence I was building. My parents initially tried to maintain control through financial means. They had contributed a small amount toward my tuition and never let me forget it. "We are sacrificing a lot for your education," my mother would say, during our weekly phone calls, though their contribution amounted to less than 10% of the total cost. When I received my first perfect score on a difficult algorithm design project, I made the mistake of mentioning it to my mother. "That is nice, honey," she said distractedly, before immediately changing the subject. "Did you hear Jason got a promotion at the car dealership? Your father is so proud." The pattern continued. Every achievement of mine was acknowledged briefly, before the conversation pivoted to Jason's latest job or girlfriend or apartment. It became clear that even with physical distance, the emotional dynamics remained unchanged. 3 months into my freshman year, Jason showed up at my dorm unannounced. I returned from class to find him lounging on my bed, flipping through my textbooks. The sight of him in my safe space sent a shock of adrenaline through my system. "Surprise, little brother," he said with that familiar smirk. "Thought I would check out your fancy school." "How did you find my room?" I asked, remaining in the doorway, unwilling to fully enter. "Mom gave me your address. Said you would be happy to see a familiar face." He stayed for 3 days, sleeping on my floor, borrowing money. He never repaid, embarrassing me in front of new friends with humiliating childhood stories, most of which were fabricated. When he finally left, I had to clean up beer cans and apologize to my roommate for the disruption. That night I called my mother. "Why would you give Jason my dorm information without asking me first?" "He is your brother," she said, as if that explained everything. "He missed you." "He does not miss me. He spent 3 days making my life miserable, just like always." "You are being dramatic. He came all that way to see you. You should be grateful for family who care enough to visit." It was the same gaslighting, the same denial of reality. Nothing had changed except my location. During sophomore year, I began seeing a therapist through the university's counseling services. Dr. Mitchell was the first person who helped me name what I had experienced: chronic psychological abuse enabled by parents who prioritized family image over their younger son's well-being. "What you are describing is not normal sibling rivalry," Dr. Mitchell said during one session. "And your parents' failure to protect you constitutes a form of neglect, even if they provided materially for your needs." Those sessions became crucial to my healing. I learned about family systems and dysfunctional dynamics. I came to understand that my parents' behavior was not just misguided love, but a profound failure of parental responsibility. Most importantly, I learned that limiting contact with toxic family members was not selfish, but an act of necessary self-preservation. By junior year, I had reduced communication with my family to brief monthly phone calls and obligatory holiday visits. Each trip home was an exercise in endurance. Jason, now working at our father's friend's car dealership, continued his pattern of subtle humiliation whenever we were together. My parents continued to pretend everything was normal. The final confrontation happened during winter break of my senior year. I had brought my girlfriend Rachel home to meet my family. Against my better judgment, I had hoped they would be on their best behavior with an outsider present. During Christmas dinner, Jason began telling Rachel funny stories about me that were thinly veiled references to times he had bullied me. When he started describing the dance incident, misrepresenting it as me being too clumsy to avoid falling into paint cans, something snapped. "That is not what happened," I interrupted. "You pushed me into those paint cans deliberately to ruin my suit and make me miss the dance." The table fell silent. Jason laughed nervously. "Always so sensitive. It was just a joke." "It was not a joke. It was cruel, deliberate, and part of a pattern of abuse that you inflicted for years while Mom and Dad looked the other way." My father's face darkened. "That is enough, Alex. We are not going to ruin Christmas dinner with these ridiculous accusations." "Ridiculous." I turned to Rachel. "Did they tell you about the time Jason put laxatives in my drink before a school presentation? Or when he destroyed my science fair project? Or spread rumors to keep me from having friends?" "Alex, stop this right now." My mother pleaded, tears already forming. "Why are you trying to hurt us this way?" "I am not trying to hurt you. I am finally telling the truth that none of you have been willing to hear for 15 years. We left that night. Rachel was silent in the car until we were halfway to our hotel. "Everything you told me about your family was true," she said quietly. "I thought maybe you were exaggerating, but if anything, you understated it." The next morning, I composed an email to my parents. It was long, detailed, and unflinching in its account of the abuse I had suffered and their complicity in it. I explained that I would be taking a break from contact with them until they could acknowledge the reality of what had happened and take responsibility for their part in it. Their response was exactly what I had expected. My father called angry and defensive. "After everything we have done for you, this is how you repay us. With a laundry list of complaints and accusations against your brother, we raised you better than this." My mother sent tearful voicemails about family loyalty and forgiveness, never once acknowledging what I had actually written. Several relatives called to tell me I was breaking my parents' hearts and should apologize. Not one person asked if what I had described was true. Not one person expressed concern about what I had endured. The family closed ranks around Jason and my parents just as they always had. The decision to cut ties completely was not made in anger, but in sorrow and self-protection. I changed my phone number. I created email filters that sent their messages to a folder I checked only occasionally. I declined invitations to family events. I spent holidays with friends or Rachel's family. Those first holidays away were difficult. Despite everything, there was grief in the separation, a mourning for the family I had wished for, rather than the one I actually had. Thanksgiving with Rachel's warm, functional family only highlighted what I had never experienced. Christmas morning, without the familiar traditions, felt hollow, even as I recognized that those traditions had been wrapped in layers of tension and fear. Gradually, I built a chosen family of friends who valued and respected me. My professors became mentors. Rachel's parents welcomed me as one of their own. I discovered that family could be defined by how people treated each other rather than by shared DNA. As graduation approached, I received multiple job offers from tech companies. I accepted a position with a software firm in Seattle, putting another layer of distance between myself and Portland. As I crossed the stage to receive my degree, I scanned the audience out of habit, half expecting to see my parents, despite not having invited them. Of course they were not there. But Raj was cheering loudly. Rachel was taking photos, and her parents were beaming with genuine pride. I realized I did not need my biological family's approval to feel complete. Seattle became my new home, a city of innovation and reinvention that matched my own journey. The software company that hired me, Horizon Technologies, provided challenging work designing security systems for corporate clients. I thrived in the collaborative environment, quickly earning a reputation as a problem solver and reliable team member. Within 2 years, I had been promoted twice and moved from a small studio apartment to a comfortable one-bedroom with a view of Puget Sound. I bought furniture that expressed my personal style rather than reflecting the beige practicality of my parents' home. I adopted a cat named Tesla, who greeted me each evening with unquestioning affection. Bit by bit, I built a life, defined by my own choices, rather than reactions to my family's dysfunction. Rachel and I had amicably parted ways after graduation when career opportunities took us to different cities. In Seattle, I met Anthony during a rock climbing class. He was a graphic designer with a quiet confidence and genuine interest in people that drew me in immediately. Our relationship developed slowly, built on mutual respect and open communication. When I finally told him about my family history, his response was everything I needed. "Thank you for trusting me with that," he said simply. "It explains a lot about your strength and resilience." With Anthony's support and continued therapy sessions, I worked through the lingering effects of my upbringing. I learned to recognize when hypervigilance from years of Jason's unpredictable attacks affected my current relationships. I practiced accepting compliments without waiting for the other shoe to drop. I discovered that disagreements could happen without someone being diminished or abandoned. News about Jason came sporadically through my cousin Daniel, the only family member who respected my boundaries while maintaining contact. According to Daniel, Jason's life was following a predictable trajectory. He had been fired from the car dealership for aggressive behavior toward customers. He had a string of failed relationships, each ending when the woman could not handle his personality. He had moved back in with my parents twice, between apartments. Uncle Robert and Aunt Linda still make excuses for him. Daniel told me during one of our occasional phone calls. Last month he totaled his car driving home from a bar, and they bought him a new one. They say he is just going through a rough patch. The rough patch continued. Jason received his first DUI citation, then his second. He was fired from another job for showing up intoxicated. He got into a bar fight that resulted in assault charges, which were dropped after my father hired an expensive lawyer. Through it all, my parents continued to support him financially and emotionally, never requiring accountability or change. I felt a complex mix of emotions about Jason's spiral. There was a certain vindication in seeing the golden child falter while I succeeded. But there was also sadness for the brother he might have been in a healthier family system. And there was anger that my parents continued to enable behaviors that were destroying him just as surely as they had damaged me. My own life continued its upward trajectory. I was assigned to lead a major project, developing security protocols for a Fortune 500 client. The successful completion of that project led to a significant bonus and another promotion. Anthony moved in with me, and we began discussing buying a house together. I had friends who appreciated my dry humor and respected my boundaries. I had colleagues who valued my contributions. I had built a life that felt secure and authentic. Occasionally, I experienced moments of weakness where I considered reconnecting with my parents. Usually, these moments coincided with significant life events. My 30th birthday, a major promotion, the day Anthony and I closed on our first house. The cultural programming about family bonds runs deep, and it took conscious effort to remind myself that those bonds had been severed not by my choice alone, but by years of mistreatment and denial. Family is supposed to be a source of support and love. My therapist reminded me during one session, when I expressed guilt about maintaining distance. You did not reject a healthy family relationship. You protected yourself from an abusive one. Those are very different things. I developed a personal philosophy about family and obligation that guided my decisions. Blood relation alone did not create entitlement to a place in my life. Respect, reciprocity, and recognition of past harms were non-negotiable prerequisites for any relationship, family or otherwise. I would not set myself on fire to keep others warm, especially those who had watched me burn before without intervention. The contrast between my stable, fulfilling life and Jason's chaotic existence grew starker with each passing year. I had a loving partner, a home we owned together, a successful career, and a circle of genuine friends. Jason had accumulated debt, legal problems, failed relationships, and an increasingly obvious alcohol dependency, all while continuing to live periodically in our parents' home well into his 30s. My parents made occasional attempts to reach out, especially around holidays. The messages followed a predictable pattern expressions of love, without acknowledgement of past harms, invitations to family gatherings, without recognition of why I stayed away, guilt-laden references to their advancing age, and how family should stick together. One Christmas card included a family photo, my aging parents flanking Jason, all three smiling as if nothing was wrong. The card was signed, "We miss you and love you always. Family is forever." There was no mention of my repeated requests for accountability, no reference to the detailed email I had sent years earlier outlining the abuse I had endured. It was as if they expected me to simply forget the past and rejoin the family narrative they had created. I placed the card in a drawer rather than displaying it. Anthony found it there while looking for stamps. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. "Yes," I said, and realized I meant it. Their denial does not change my reality anymore. That night, I added the card to a box containing the sparse documentation of my childhood. A few photos, school awards, the email I had sent cutting ties printed out to remind me of my own truth when doubt crept in. The box represented a past I had survived, rather than a present that defined me. I closed the lid firmly and returned it to the back of the closet where it belonged. The call came on a rainy Tuesday evening in November. Anthony and I were making dinner together, Tesla weaving between our legs, hoping for dropped ingredients. My phone displayed Daniel calling, an unusual occurrence since my cousin typically texted rather than called. "Jason has been arrested," Daniel said without preamble when I answered. "Serious charges this time. Embezzlement from the investment firm where he was working. They are saying he took almost $300,000 from client accounts over the past year." I sat down heavily on a kitchen stool. Despite the years of separation, despite knowing about Jason's escalating problems, the news hit me with unexpected force. "How did you find out?" Aunt Linda called my mom in hysterics. "Uncle Robert is trying to mortgage their house for bail money and legal fees. They are completely falling apart." "I am sorry to hear that," I said carefully. "But I am not sure why you are telling me this." Daniel hesitated. "They are going to call you Alex. They need more money than they can raise. Aunt Linda mentioned that you have a good job now, that you could help if you wanted to." The familiar anger surged back, accompanied by a bitter laugh. Of course that would be why they finally reach out. True to Daniel's prediction, my mother called the next morning. I had kept my new number private from my parents, but apparently Daniel had not. I let it go to voicemail, then listened with a growing sense of disbelief. "Alex, sweetheart, I know we have not talked in a while, but we need your help." My mother's voice wavered between tears. "Your brother is in serious trouble. The lawyers want $75,000 retainer, and the bail is set at $150,000. We are putting up the house, but it is not enough. Please call us back. Family has to come together in times like this." My father called that evening, his message markedly different in tone, but identical in purpose. "Alex, this is your father. Your brother needs help, and as family, you have an obligation to assist. Call me back immediately to discuss what you can contribute." Not one word about the years of silence. Not one acknowledgement of why I had cut contact. Not even a perfunctory, "How are you?" before the financial request. It was as if they were calling a bank rather than their estranged son. I discussed the situation with Anthony that night. "What are you thinking?" he asked, careful not to influence my decision. "I am thinking that nothing has changed," I said slowly. "They still see me as an extension of themselves, existing to serve family needs without question. They still have not acknowledged any of the abuse or their role in enabling it. They still prioritize Jason above everything else." "Those are observations," Anthony noted. "But what are you feeling?" The question made me pause. Beneath the anger and resentment was a complex tangle of emotions, lingering grief for the parents I had wished for, pity for their current predicament, and a small, unwelcome spark of hope that this crisis might finally force them to see the truth about Jason and their own complicity. I scheduled an emergency session with my therapist the next day. "They only reached out because they need money," I explained. "Not because they miss me or recognize what happened. Just because their golden child needs bailing out again, literally this time." "What would helping or not helping mean to you?" she asked. If I help, I am right back in the family system, the responsible one cleaning up after Jason while they enable him. Nothing would change, except they would have access to my life and resources again. I took a deep breath. If I do not help, they will see it as final proof that I am selfish and cruel. They will never understand why. And which matters more to you now? Their understanding or your well-being? The answer was clear, though not easy. My well-being. The life I have built. The boundaries I have established. I called my father the following day. The conversation was brief and painful. I cannot provide money for Jason's legal defense, I said firmly, after he had outlined the situation in businesslike terms. Cannot, or will not, he demanded. Both. I do not have $75,000 liquid, and even if I did, I would not use it this way. This way, you mean helping your brother in his time of need. I mean enabling Jason to escape consequences yet again, just like you and Mom have done his entire life. His voice turned cold. I see. So this is revenge for your perceived childhood slights. This is not revenge, Dad. This is a boundary. I left that toxic dynamic years ago, and I am not stepping back into it now. Toxic, he sputtered. We gave you everything. We supported your education. We encouraged your career. And now when your family needs you, you turn your back because of some imagined persecution complex. I felt a familiar tightening in my chest, the old anxiety response to my father's dismissal. But I was not a child anymore, dependent on his approval or protection. I was a grown man who had built a life on my own terms. Dad, I sent you and Mom a detailed email years ago, explaining exactly what Jason did to me and how you both enabled it. Did you ever even read it? That ridiculous list of complaints. Your brother teased you sometimes, like all brothers do. You always were too sensitive. Goodbye, Dad, I said quietly. I wish you and Mom and Jason well, but I cannot be part of this. My mother called immediately after. Her approach was all tears and emotional manipulation. How can you be so cruel? We are your parents. We gave you life. After everything we have done for you, you would abandon us when we need you most. Mom, when I needed you most. When Jason was terrorizing me daily, where were you? When he physically hurt me, destroyed my belongings, sabotaged my friendships, what did you do? That was just sibling rivalry. You are holding on to childhood grudges while your brother's life is falling apart. His life is falling apart because actions have consequences, Mom. Something you and Dad never taught him. She began sobbing harder. Please, Alex. If not for Jason, then for me and your father. We will lose our house. I am sorry about that, truly. But Jason made his choices, and now all of you are facing the consequences of years of enabling his behavior. I cannot fix this for you. The fallout was swift and extensive. My father sent a scathing email calling me ungrateful and selfish. My mother left tearful voicemails about family duty and Christian forgiveness. Extended family members I had not spoken to in years suddenly contacted me to express their disappointment in my decision. Daniel called again, sounding uncomfortable. Look, I understand your position, but the family is really upset. Aunt Linda is telling everyone you have abandoned them in their darkest hour. What is she saying about why I cut contact in the first place, I asked. Well, nothing really. Just that you had some falling out over something Jason did years ago. Some falling out, I repeated flatly. Daniel, did I ever tell you about the time Jason put laxatives in my drink before a class presentation, or when he destroyed my science project that might have won a scholarship, or when he deliberately ruined my suit so I would miss the dance with my first girlfriend? Silence on the line. No, you never mentioned those things. Ask your mother if she remembers the time she visited when I was 10, and told my mom that Jason's treatment of me was not normal. Ask her what my mother said in response. Another pause. I will. I am sorry, Alex. I did not know. A week later, I received a letter from Jason, postmarked from the county jail. The handwriting was shaky, the tone desperate. He wrote about how he had made some mistakes but was still family. He claimed to have changed, and to realize now how important family loyalty was. He asked for my help in the name of brotherhood, and promised to make it up to me once he was free again. Not once did he acknowledge the years of torment he had inflicted. Not once did he express genuine remorse for specific actions. It was a letter entirely focused on his needs, his predicament, his desires. Even facing serious criminal charges, he remained the center of his own universe, unable to truly see others as full human beings with their own valid experiences. I did not respond to the letter. I placed it in the box with the other remnants of my family history and closed the lid. Some wounds cannot be healed by words alone, especially words that carefully avoid addressing the actual harm done. Some bridges once burned cannot and should not be rebuilt. Instead, I focused on reinforcing the foundations of the life I had created: my relationship with Anthony, my career, my friendships, my continued personal growth. I donated to a charity supporting children from abusive homes, turning my pain into something that might help others. I continued therapy, working through the complex emotions triggered by this renewed contact with my family. The crisis has passed, I told my therapist during our next session. Not their crisis, but mine. For a moment I wavered. For a moment I questioned my boundaries. But I am certain now. Certain of what she asked. That I made the right choice years ago. That nothing has changed in their understanding of what happened. That maintaining distance is still necessary for my well-being. She nodded. Crises often clarify our values and boundaries. This has been a test of yours. A test I passed, I said with quiet confidence. Even if they never understand why. 6 months after refusing to help with Jason's legal defense, I received an email from my mother. The subject line read simply, Jason's sentencing. I hesitated before opening it, preparing myself for another round of guilt and accusations. Instead, I found something unexpected. Jason was sentenced to 8 years in prison today, she wrote. The judge said the systematic nature of the embezzlement showed premeditation and a disregard for others. Your father and I are heartbroken. We lost the house. We are moving to a small apartment next month. I do not expect your sympathy or help, but I thought you should know. The lack of blame was so uncharacteristic that I read the message several times, searching for the hidden guilt trip. Finding none, I felt a strange mix of emotions: vindication that Jason was finally facing consequences, the sadness for my parents' material losses, and a quiet relief that they had apparently stopped expecting me to fix their problems. I showed the email to Anthony that evening. It seems almost like acceptance, he observed, not of their role in everything, but at least of the reality that you will not be swooping in to save them. 8 years, I said, trying to process the information. He will be over 40 when he gets out. Anthony squeezed my hand. How do you feel about it? Conflicted, I admitted. Part of me thinks justice has finally been served, not just for his financial crimes, but for all the years of torment. But another part feels sad for the waste of potential for the decent brother he might have been in a healthier family. In the following weeks, I experienced what my therapist called complex grief mourning, not only for the family I had lost, but for the family I had never actually had. I grieved the parents who had failed to protect me, the brother who had tormented rather than supported me, and the child I had been navigating that environment alone. The grief process was painful but cleansing. I came to understand that forgiveness did not require reconciliation. I could release my anger toward my family without inviting them back into my life. I could wish them well without sacrificing my boundaries. I could acknowledge the pain of our shared past without allowing it to dictate my future. 3 months after Jason's sentencing, I received another unexpected email, this time from my father. It was brief and stilted, but contained something I had never expected to read. Your mother and I have been attending a support group for parents of incarcerated adults. Some of the things discussed there have made me reconsider certain aspects of our family history. While I still believe you have exaggerated many incidents with your brother, I recognize now that we may have dismissed your concerns too readily. This is not an apology, as I still maintain we did our best as parents, but it is an acknowledgement that your perspective deserves consideration. It was not the full recognition I had once craved, but it was more than I had ever received before. I replied with equal care. Thank you for this message. I appreciate the acknowledgement. I hope the support group continues to be helpful for you and Mom during this difficult time. Around this time, I reconnected with a few extended family members who had reached out with more understanding. My Aunt Rebecca, who had tried to intervene when I was 10, invited Anthony and me to her 70th birthday celebration. I should have done more, she told me privately during the party. I saw what was happening, but Linda and Robert were so defensive. I failed you too. You were the only one who tried, I reminded her. I remember that Thanksgiving conversation. It meant something even if nothing changed. Building on that reconnection, I established cautious relationships with a few cousins who expressed genuine interest in understanding my experience. These selective family bonds were based on mutual respect rather than obligation, with clear boundaries about what topics were open for discussion and which family members I was willing to hear about. My professional life continued to flourish. Horizon Technologies promoted me to Director of Security Architecture, a role that allowed me to shape the company's approach to digital protection while mentoring younger engineers. I found unexpected fulfillment in helping recent graduates navigate workplace challenges, offering the guidance I had wished for in my own early career. Anthony and I celebrated 5 years together by traveling to Japan, a trip we had planned for years. In Kyoto, surrounded by ancient temples and gardens designed for contemplation, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me to this point. The contrast between my current peace and my chaotic upbringing was stark. I had not just survived my past, I had transcended it. Upon returning home, I made a decision that felt both significant and right. I established a small scholarship fund at MIT for students who had overcome adverse childhood experiences. The Alexander Wilson Resilience Scholarship would provide not just financial support, but mentorship and resources for navigating independent adulthood after family trauma. "Why did you use your real name?" Anthony asked when I showed him the scholarship documentation. "You have always been so private about your family history." "Because I am not ashamed anymore," I explained. "My experience shaped me, but it does not define me. If attaching my name to this helps even one student feel less alone in their struggle, it is worth it." As the years passed, I developed a philosophy about family that guided my decisions and relationships. Blood relation alone created no inherent obligation. Family was defined by consistent care, mutual respect, and the safety to be authentic. Sometimes the healthiest families were those we created rather than those we were born into. Boundaries were not walls, but vital structures that protected the life I had worked so hard to build. I came to understand that my parents had done significant damage, not just to me, but to Jason as well. Their enabling had not been love, but a profound disservice that prevented him from developing empathy, accountability, or self-regulation. Their protection had ultimately left him vulnerable to his own worst impulses. In trying to shield him from consequences, they had ensured he would eventually face the harshest ones possible. My therapy sessions became less frequent, but remained a valuable space for processing my evolving relationship with my past. "You know," my therapist observed during one session, "many people who experience what you did become trapped in resentment or replicate the patterns they suffered. You have done neither." I had help, I acknowledged. Teachers who saw my potential. Friends who showed me what healthy relationships look like. Therapists who helped me understand what happened was not my fault. "Yes, but you were the one who did the work. You were the one who made different choices." Those words stayed with me, a reminder that while I could not control the family I was born into, every step since had been my choice. I had chosen healing over bitterness, boundaries over capitulation, growth over stagnation. Those choices had created the life I now enjoyed. Anthony and I eventually married in a small ceremony surrounded by our chosen family of friends. My Aunt Rebecca attended along with 2 cousins who had become genuine friends. My parents and Jason were not invited, a decision that brought no guilt or regret. The day was filled with joy, laughter, and the quiet satisfaction of having created a relationship based on mutual respect and genuine care. Throughout these years, I maintained my stance on contact with my parents. I responded politely to their occasional emails, but did not initiate contact. I acknowledged major life events and holidays with brief messages, but did not revive regular communication. I made peace with the reality that they would never fully acknowledge or apologize for their role in my childhood trauma. This resolution was not the Hollywood ending of tearful reconciliation and healed relationships that culture often promotes. It was something more realistic. and ultimately more satisfying the knowledge that I had broken the cycle, that I had created boundaries, that protected my well-being, that I had built a life based on genuine connection rather than obligation and fear. The greatest lesson I learned through this journey was that setting boundaries is not selfish but necessary, that enabling harmful behavior ultimately hurts everyone involved, that true family supports growth, acknowledges harm, and respects boundaries. And perhaps most importantly, that we are not defined by what was done to us, but by how we choose to live afterward. If my story resonates with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear that it is okay to set boundaries with toxic family members. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to protect your own well-being? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found value in this story, please hit the like button and subscribe to support more content about healing from difficult family dynamics. Remember, you deserve relationships that build you up, not tear you down. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to create the life you deserve.